Good morning and welcome to the Rural Sense Show. I am the Instructive Scholar and your host, Mr. Grant Dahl. And welcome. This is the inaugural podcast of the Rural Sense Show. And what we're doing today, we discuss issues of the day, and especially from historical standpoints in some ways where we can apply them. And it's really quite a honor to be on the show for the first time and to really launch what we hope will be a long and glorious discussion of the issues affecting today's world, especially the controversial ones. And I can't really think of a topic that is going to be more controversial to some people than the one that we're going to be starting off with today. So we're going to be discussing today about public-funded sports stadiums, the drawbacks and the advantages that they present. And we're also going to be talking about the fiasco going on down in Los Angeles with the Chargers and some of the things that have been unfolding. Although I understand, it is Columbus Day today, and I guess the Chargers did get their first win yesterday, but it was on the road against a team imploding. So before we get into that, I'm going to introduce our guest here today. He's really more like a co-host in this particular point. But I'd like to introduce my fellow Terrestrial ball blogger and the guy who is, he's really one of the most intellectually gifted men I know, Mr. Paul Wilson, who lives in the Valley of the Shadow of Death, as he calls it. So, Mr. Wilson, thank you for joining us. How are you doing, my friend?
I am doing very well. How are you, Grant?
I am very well. Thank you. Thank you very much. I trust everything is well down there in the valley
Well,
so far.
The place hasn't burned down yet, so despite my best efforts.
Oh,
so.
yes. Yes, I can understand that. So, but yeah, so let's get into some of these topics. I mean, because you and I, we've been watching the NFL for a while, and we also have been following some of the issues that have been going on here. But seeing as you're a fan of a team that shares a division with the Chargers, I'm sure you've probably been following some of the fiasco that's been unfolding down there in Los Angeles.
A little bit, not too much. In fairness, the Chargers basically there are two major teams that are rivals to us. The Raiders and the Chiefs are the rivals to the Broncos. I'm a Broncos fan, huge one. And the Chargers are sort of there. I mean, everyone sort of instinctually hates Phillip Rivers just because he's Phillip Rivers, and has notorious for being, what's the term, vocal on the field, etc. But, I mean, people don't actually hate the Chargers that much. There's sort of pity going on at this point. So,
yeah, I can understand that.
The Chiefs, Raiders, definitely, massive hatred. It's more annoyance at Rivers and the Chargers when they do well and actually do some damage in the playoffs, but that's not going to happen for a little bit, I think.
No, I'm venturing to say not. I think their glory days are over because I remember when I first started watching back in the late '90s, the Chargers were a laughingstock.
Yeah.
They had all that Ryan Leaf fiasco, and they had the whole mess going on there, and but it wasn't until I guess they got LaDainian Tomlinson and Drew Brees that they really started to turn things around, and then they got Rivers to replace Brees a little later on.
Yep.
And then then they had that long run where they were actually doing really, really well, but then now since North Turner really got fired, they've been going downhill ever since. I haven't seen very much going well for them, and that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard to get people excited about a team, especially when you need new things, like new stadiums and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to get people to support, that aspect of them, if they're not doing well. That's something that, is like. It's something that's affected other teams in the league so far. I know it kind of bit the Rams a little bit up in St. Louis. They were doing so poorly for so long after the exit stage right of Martz and the Greatest Show on Turf. So.
Yep. Well, I mean, you have a couple of good years, whatever, and people think you're going great. Yeah, and then it's just you really need a consistent fan base, though. And I'm not sure if the Chargers ever had that. I'm not sure if the Rams ever had that. The Broncos do have it. Broncos have fans all over the place. Raiders, well, I don't know. They pissed off their fan base by moving. Chiefs are still really, I don't know, what's the term? Obnoxious. And
Yeah,
Chiefs fans are notoriously obnoxious. And I think I'm pissing off everyone. This is great.
yeah. Well, I could throw in a couple of my 2 cents there. The Packers fans make everybody unhappy.
Well,
But,
I mean, and then there's the Patriots fan.
oh yes, of course, the Patriots fans. Although the Patriots are not doing that great this year either. So, I mean, I was actually wondering a little bit. I mean,
Is Tom Brady immortal?
yeah, it's his Tom Brady. Well, when he hit 40, I was like, that was. I mean, I know I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, but I know that was one thing I was wondering about when I heard that Brady was going to hit 40. I was like, well, it was like that's kind of when Favre and Manning hit the wall, was when they hit 40.
Yeah.
It's like I was wondering. It's like it's like I know Brady has this incredible workout regimen, and he's incredibly smart. And he studies and studies, but it's like your body can only
Father
go
time
so
catches
long.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and not only that, when they announced he was going to grace the Madden cover, I was like, oh boy, the Madden curse. It's like, because that's wrecked some pretty good careers. It's like some of the players who finally make it out of the Madden cover, and they don't last very long after that. I mean, I don't know how much people buy into that, but
Yeah.
it's like I know that I've discussed with a couple NFL fans, and they said that it's like when they saw Brady on the cover, they were like, oh, maybe he's finally gonna get it coming to him or something like that. So. But yeah. So anyhow, that's a question there. That's a question for another time. I guess later on in the season, once we see how the Patriots, because the Patriots do seem to warm up towards the end of the season. Same with the Packers. So it's kind of that would probably be a conversation for later to see if Brady finally does have father time catching up on him. But yeah, I mean, getting back to the Chargers here for a little bit, they had that whole relocation fiasco. Where they've been trying to get a new stadium in San Diego for so long. Let's face it, Qualcomm Stadium down there in San Diego, it looks like the Roman Coliseum when you see it from the air. That thing is old. It's like, so I don't dispute the fact that they needed a new stadium. I accept that fact, but it's like, with some of the ways they were trying to pull it off, it was like. I was just looking at it, I was like, did these guys not learn from what Stan Kroenke did when he moved the Rams to California? Kroenke knew he wasn't going to get public funding for a stadium, so he footed the whole bill.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And it's like, and furthermore, San Diego, all these
Which
places,
gives a lot of goodwill to, basically, because taxpayers aren't funding it, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that's actually become a really big issue because people are realizing how much of their tax money is being fed up to pad the pockets of some of these people who just want these really big projects that that give the city a nice a nice outline, but they don't really add anything outside of the maybe 8 to 10 events that happen per year.
Well, let's back up. What are the advantages of having a stadium in your city? Essentially, what are the advantages for a city for having a sports team? You get you get a bunch of seasonal jobs. You also get basically bars, restaurants, whatever sort of on your side, as it were. You get that drives, I guess, consumption in that way. So you've got those two things. You also get in the sense of a city's put on the map with sports teams. Basically say, hey, we have this big, so you get a tourism draw. And you get, saying, oh, we have all this good, basically, we're big enough to have a major, sports team where people come, for events and whatever. We're on the map. Aside from that, what do you get? What does a city get from a team in the area? Not really too much.
No, not really too much. And all those advantages you just listed come with some serious restraints. Like, for instance, the jobs you mentioned.
They are seasonal, obviously.
Right.
You can use the stadium for other events, I guess, so concerts or whatever. So I guess there's that. But you talk. At least it's not the Olympics where you build these huge massive things and then 4 years later they're pretty much got concrete grass and stuff growing up in. concrete.
Yeah, Rio de Janeiro, anybody?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, other Athens, yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's
Athens.
a huge one.
And just building off your point there, it's like even the jobs that are more permanent that that a stadium brings are really low paying. They're not the kind of jobs that people can make a living off of.
Yeah, they're essentially secondary jobs. Like you need something else really in order to.
Right. Right. So yeah, so I mean like that's why I kind of look I kind of look askance at some of these claims that people make, when they're pushing for new stadiums and they say like, it's like we're going to get a great
A
we're going to get a lot of new
world-class
jobs.
facility.
Yeah, world-class facility. It's going to look so nice on the map. It's going to look so nice in the overhead photos and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, it's like, and the photos are going to sell for 30 cents
Yeah,
online. It's like it's not going to do you terribly much good. And not only that, I mean, like this was the thing. This is how I kind of felt bad for the people of St. Louis when the Rams left. They were still sitting on a couple of million, like I think it was over $100 million in debt
yeah,
on the
yeah.
dome in there, and it's like, how are they going to pay for it now? It's like, the dome has no tenants. It's like, yeah, you're going to have a couple events, but you can't charge those through the wazoo because if you do, nobody's going to want to rent,
Right,
and stuff
exactly.
like that. It's like, and so how are you going to pay off that debt? And that, and what blows my mind even more was that before the Rams moved, the St. Louis wanted to tear down the dome before they were even paid off with it, and build this new stadium up on the side of the river. And I'm like, you guys, it's like why don't you just do what the Saints are doing down in New Orleans and just add some stuff to the dome? It's like, just it's like, I get that it's not perfect, but it's like, but yeah, it's like, don't throw away an investment,
Well, that's the
that's
thing. It
really
is.
not built.
America is such a throwaway culture,
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff like that, like you, is precisely the reason why. It's the living exemplification of just, we're done with it. But we could get 20 more years out of it. We could get 20, 40 more years out of it, even without doing upgrades to it. But no, build a new one. Yeah, it's like,
right, yeah, no, yeah,
really? So
it's like, because it seems like as the new stadiums go up, and I mean, and I'm willing to grant that there are some stadiums in the NFL that needed to be replaced. I mean, Qualcomm and San Diego being one of them.
oh yeah,
And there are a few that kind of needed to be replaced, or maybe you didn't have enough seats to accommodate all the people who wanted to come to the games. Okay, fine, I grant that, but
what was
it's
the
like,
other one? Veterans Field, I think.
I think it was Veterans in Philadelphia. Yeah,
Yeah, Philly. That was another one where everything was falling apart. They had
yeah,
what
yeah.
was the stadium that had the like railing come out?
The railing come out.
Yeah, there was
I
a
remember what you're talking about, but I don't remember the name of the stadium. I don't. Yeah, but that was a problem, and I know that stadium. Yeah, that one too had to come down. So, but I don't remember its name off the top of
yeah,
my head.
that might have been a college one.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no. I mean, like, I understand. There's some cases where I can understand that you need a new stadium and stuff like that. But there's other ones that I'm just looking at, and I'm like, it's like you could have done just fine. It's like, just do a renovation. It's like that's what the Bears and the Packers did with Lambeau and Soldier Field. So it's like they didn't tear the thing down; they just did a major renovation and had the team relocate for about a year or something like that.
Yeah,
It's like you can do that and you can get that done. Now it's like, so, but now I guess, I mean, if we could go on here to what the results have been with the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers kind of threw the Chargers threw
sorry.
a temper tantrum over the fact that they couldn't get public funding to help with their new stadium. And so the Spanos family then decides that they're going to, they apply for relocation to Los Angeles with two other teams, Raiders and Rams. And then the NFL owners decide that, it's like, okay, it's like, we're definitely going to let the Rams move because that's where they're from, and stuff like that. And a lot of Southern California was really excited about that. He's like, and we'll give a consolation prize to the Chargers and let them move, it's like, if they can't get their stadium issue resolved. And after about it, and the thing that kind of blew my mind was the fact that it's like they only gave the Chargers a year to try and get the thing sorted out with San Diego. Now, that might have been, I mean, like, I can't speak for certain here, but just the way, considering the way that the Chargers ownership group has handled this, it's like I kind of look at that and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Yeah, this they really didn't give themselves a ton of time, but I don't think they wanted a ton of time. I think they were kind of, they said goodbye probably the minute that they they applied with the Raiders to try and move there.
Right. Well,
Which
I mean,
was
that's the thing. I mean, if they've already made their decision, then yeah,
yeah.
it's no amount of cajoling or common sense is really gonna make a dent.
Yeah, I mean, and even the protestations of the commissioner Roger Goodell, even because Goodell apparently is very pro San Diego, but he couldn't, even he couldn't convince them to stay, and so it was and said, but yeah,
Wait, Roger, I didn't actually know that. Roger Goodell actually made a smart decision,
well he had, well
or at least had a smart idea.
yeah, well he
For real?
I guess well. The articles that I've read, at least, some of the pieces that I've read over online, they kind of said that they said Goodell was really pushing for, he was really hoping that they could work something out and push for that and stuff like that. And I guess he was making it clear that that was his, that was what the result he desired, was that the team stay in San Diego and keep the loyal fan base there. But but obviously, the owners kind of overruled him, and kind of because, and again, I'm going off a piece that I read here that apparently the word from the insiders or from some sources inside the owners group was that the reason they gave the Chargers ownership group the permission to do this move,
Mm-hmm.
even without the commissioner's wholehearted support,
Yeah.
was the fact that apparently the Chargers ownership group had basically towed the league line. They'd been good owners and stuff like that. They'd been very cooperative and all that stuff. So they felt like, hey, he's a nice guy. We need to give him a break or something like that. It's like that was kind of the
If that
impression
is
that I got.
seriously the reason, then okay.
Yeah. So the Chargers take up their option to move, after kind of what I thought was a half-hearted effort to try and convince San Diego or the San Diego citizens to, finance their stadium. And they come up here, they move into a soccer stadium. That's the first thing that kind of blew my mind. I was like, you're moving into a soccer stadium. I mean, granted, I know that there are not a lot of venues in the LA area that can accommodate an NFL team, but it's like, but you had to choose a soccer stadium. It's like, okay. And now, and this stadium seats like an incredibly small number of people. And
They can't even fill that.
yeah, and they can't even fill that. I mean, like, they've only been here like a couple months, and the 2 preseason games and the couple home games that they've had already, they've lost them all. That's been the first thing. Um, they they've they can't they've lost them all, and I mean, this comes out in article after article after article. You just have to like type it in, on one of the search engines and just find out, Los Angeles Chargers attendance issues, and you'll find articles where they're showing pictures that the stadium is filled with
Yeah.
fans of the other team. And
Oh,
it's
it's
like,
hilarious.
yeah, no, it is. It's sad and it's hilarious at the
Oh,
same time.
it gets better too.
Oh,
The mayor of Los Angeles apparently was like basically said that we wanted the Rams. We did not want the Chargers.
oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
this is the mayor of the city, and it's like,
Yeah, yeah. No, I read that too. I was like, the
really?
thing was, when the Chargers first moved, you had a number of sports fans who were speaking through this one journalist. This journalist said that he had been around to many events and stuff like that where they had been announcing that the Chargers were coming to town and stuff like that, and he said they were routinely getting booed.
Mm-hmm.
He said the
Yep.
Chargers were routinely getting booed, and the headline of his article was just like LA to Chargers, we don't want you. It's
Right.
like, and it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
and so I mean, like this is just hilarious. It's like and now they got the attendance problems. And actually, I saw one picture of on one of the articles of the Chargers fans, the few Chargers fans who did show up at the soccer stadium, and they had a sign. This one Chargers fan had a sign said Rivers and Gates, Hall of Famers, retiring in a soccer stadium. Thanks, Dean. Referring to the owner of the
Yes. These guys,
Chargers.
yeah.
That's yeah. So it was like, I was like, oh man. I was like that. It's like that. That's bad. It's like what you got. I mean, because
It's true though. It's very
it,
true.
it is very true. It's very, very true, and it's sad. and not only that, obviously they won't officially announce anything, but apparently a lot of the Chargers players didn't want to go to Los Angeles. They didn't want to move there. I guess Rivers was probably one of the ones who made
Yeah,
his
I mean,
displeasure known the most. But it
doesn't
was
he have
like,
family down there? I think he has family.
yeah, he's got a really big presence in the San Diego community.
Yeah,
And he's very well respected there, and yeah, he's Rivers. He's kind of an unknown here, in the wider world of the NFL. But I've heard it said that Rivers is as important to San Diego as Drew Brees is to New Orleans.
oh, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, especially considering how once you get Rivers off the field, he's one of the nicest, most charitable men that you'll ever meet.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I mean it's like so, but yeah, when you got a guy like Rivers who's really a solid, upstanding citizen, and even he's not thrilled about it, and he's the quarterback of your team, it's like that's not a good sign. That is not a good sign at all.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, San Diego is apparently really pissed. Like, why is there a reason to be a Chargers fan now? Because, see, you piss off your one fan base. You have San Diego. You have movers refusing to move the San Diego Chargers out of. You have basically the San Diego Chargers contact movers, and the movers won't even move the Chargers to Los Angeles, which is hilarious. You have. Apparently, El Palo Grill in San Diego is giving away free tacos every time the Chargers lose this year.
Wow, that's bad.
That's I mean, so you essentially tick off your fan base, and you're competing with another team in Los Angeles, which is admittedly a huge city. But I mean, why is there any reason to root for the Chargers at this point? The Chargers are in a city with another football team, not just another team, another football team,
right?
And which is not pissing off the Los Angeles taxpayers because they're paying for their own stadium. I mean, it's like...
Yeah, the Chargers are not demanding. The Chargers are not going to get publicly funded in Los Angeles either, because they're going to share the stadium with the Rams. But still, the argument that I kept hearing, that why the NFL was willing to let another team move to Los Angeles was because they said that they kind of pointed at New York as a model for that, and they said, you've got two teams sharing one stadium, Giants and Jets. Okay. And they both make it work, and said, and Los Angeles is comparable in size to New York City. So they have enough people that they can support them. But
okay, I'll buy that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, on the surface, that argument makes sense. But this was kind of the drawback that I saw when I looked at it. Is when I looked at the argument, I was like, well, yeah, on the surface that looks fine. It's like, but if you go underneath the surface, you've got a problem here, because the Chargers have never had a real presence in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I know that there have been claims. I think the Chargers ownership group, kind of has threw this out a couple times, that they said, some percentage of their fans were from Los Angeles, and they came down to San Diego and stuff like that, and so they were like, well, we're just going to move a little closer. Yeah. And I was like, well, you maybe. It's like, but I'm not. It's like, I'm willing to bet it's a really small percentage, though. Probably not the number that they were throwing out. So you had that. But then the other side to it is that the Giants and the Jets have been in New York since we can remember. They've never moved. They grew up there. In the Jets, they had they had the help back in the '60s of flamboyant Joe Namath, and stuff like that. And his brash Super Bowl guarantees and stuff like that. Which kind of helped them build up their fan base there. And then the Giants, of course, have had both the Parcells and the Tom Coughlin eras, where they, were going to Super Bowls and winning them and stuff like that. So They actually have established fan bases, which makes that
exactly.
Where the Chargers don't have that in Los Angeles, and they never have. Mm-hmm. And so I know when I was looking at this a couple of years ago, and I actually wrote a piece on one of my smaller blogs way back in the day when I was still experimenting in blogging. And when I was hearing all this talk about putting two teams in Los Angeles, and I put forward this theory, and I want to see if you think this would work as well.
Okay.
Um, my theory was that yes, you could move the Rams to Los Angeles. Is like they were there. That was where they were for the majority of their time there. It's like they have a dedicated fan base there. They still have a lot of people who would like to root for them, but they're still mad over the move and stuff like that. And I think it was kind of. If I'm remembering the quote right, I think it came from one of the longtime Los Angeles Ram greats, Fred Dreyer.
Hmm.
And Fred Dreyer basically said, "Is like the Rams logo belongs to Southern California." It's like, and a lot of people felt the same way. So it's like, so the Rams moving from St. Louis to Los Angeles, I was like, okay, I was like that could work. It's like that probably will work because that's where the Rams have been for so many years, and things like that. It's like, but if you're going to put a second team in Los Angeles, and this was the argument I put forward, was if you're going to put a second team in Los Angeles, I said it has to be an expansion team that builds its way up and
Yeah,
builds its
yeah,
own fan base. You can't move another team there because they're not going to have the fan base. They're not going to be able to transfer that fan base unless they start winning right away. And as we've seen with the Chargers already this season, that's not going to happen. Um, so it's like that. So again, that's my theory: is that if you were going to put another team in Los Angeles, it had to be an expansion team. You couldn't do anything else. You couldn't move another team there. Not the Chargers, not the Jaguars, because I know the Jaguars were a team that was thrown out there as a possible move several times. I know the Vikings were thrown out there for a little while until they got their new stadium. There was the Vikings and Rams moving down there. Uh,
hmm,
Raiders might have made it work because the Raiders did win a Super Bowl while they were down there in Los Angeles years ago, but I still have my doubts over how. I mean, like if they had really been able to hang on to their fans there, why did they move back to Oakland?
yeah.
And stuff like that. So, but yeah, so I mean, so I'd like to get your take on that and what you think of that. It's like it's like that's because I mean, when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking to myself, the only way they get two teams in Los Angeles is through expansion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. I don't. I mean, even so, I mean, New York is the only other city with two teams, and New York's New York. New York will basically we need two of everything. We're like because we're New Yorkers.
Right.
Los Angeles, I'm not even sure about that. I mean, the way you said it is the sensible way of doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, it's what is Los Angeles has. Does it have enough support even for one? I mean, does it have enough support for two teams? I don't know if I see that.
I don't know if I see it either, and
Yeah.
that was actually another side to it that I kind of was thinking of when I was kind of going through and reading about the whole situation, because I mean like I don't want to get too political here, but let's face it, California has incredibly high taxes and incredibly burdensome regulations to begin with. And he's like, so you've got
Yeah.
people fleeing. It's like the people who are actually working who are fleeing the state for tax reasons. I mean, we read about it all the time. It's like we've got states that are actually bidding for California businesses to move to their state for a gentler tax climate and stuff like that. And so, I mean, so when it boils down to it, I look at Los Angeles and I'm thinking to myself, outside of the entertainment industry, I don't see a ton of people there who would have the money to go to, to go to a Chargers game or something like that. Because let's face this too, football tickets are incredibly expensive. I mean, they're not. I mean, like
No, it's
just
insane.
yeah, it's. I mean, compared to like baseball tickets, and I've been to professional baseball games, and those
Well, not
tickets are
during the
not.
playoffs. I'm in national season. I mean, it's national season up here. I was actually looking for playoff tickets, but it's kind of crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's like $75 for
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
seats.
Playoffs I could see. Playoffs I could see, but like
But yeah,
you.
for regular, I mean, yeah, you can get $5 tickets, no problem. At least
Yeah.
where I don't know if you can do that in say Wrigley or Fenway or one of the other
Yeah.
crazy places, but
Yeah, I know in Minneapolis we're usually looking at maybe $25 tickets is probably what we're looking at. But that's not too bad
yeah, that's not
compared compared to the football tickets where you're looking at maybe $90, $100, and
Yeah.
stuff like that for a regular season game. And then, the playoffs and the Super Bowl, forget it. It's like, because those are just, so I guess my point is that, it's like you look at Los Angeles, they probably don't have enough people who can afford those prices, who can then go in and, attend games at a Los Angeles games. I mean, like they're even saying, I actually read an article too that said, the Rams are loved, but they're having trouble filling the seats still
Right.
because of the ticket prices. It's
Well,
like,
let's back this up a bit. Do they have enough people? I'm sure they probably do. Do they have enough people who are football fans who are willing to go to a game? That I don't know.
yeah,
And that's
that I don't know either.
that's the difference. So, got to make a distinction there.
Yeah, that's true. That's that was kind of the point I was trying to make, was that
Yeah, yeah.
yes, they have a lot of support there. But
The reason why Los Angeles, it's what, is it second largest city? I think.
I thought it was the largest, but I think that might be land-wise. I don't know about population-wise. I think land-wise it's the largest.
Yeah, I think population New York's still king.
Yeah, which wouldn't surprise me. It's probably a close 1-2 with New York and Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So that's but yeah, no, that's kind of the point I'm making here too, is that the Rams are, I mean, they're struggling to fill their stadium probably for financial reasons, that the tickets are just, you have too many people who are Rams fans who can't afford the ticket prices. And stuff like that. And that's probably why the Rams are having their attendance issues. But but it's still, the Rams' attendance issues are minuscule compared to what the Chargers are doing. Where they're giving their opponents in their own stadium a 9th home game, basically. And that's, because that's basically what.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
Oh yeah,
I feel bad as a division rival. Except when it's the Raiders taking advantage of a team.
Right.
But you do have to kind of love it.
Yeah, you
as a division rival, just basically knowing that your opponents are beatable. It's like
they've got so much drama going on behind
exactly that it makes it very hard to face them.
Yeah,
or very hard to beat your team. Because,
yeah. Well, that's kind of how people in the NFC North have felt for so long when the Lions went through that really bad spell.
Yeah.
For so many years, like we were used to,
get two near certain wins a year.
It's like 2 near certain wins a year. It's like, I know that 108 season, it was a guaranteed win every week.
Well, nothing's guaranteed.
True. So I was just joking there, but it's just like, so we look at this, and we got this fiasco with the Chargers, and I know they've interviewed the Chargers ownership groups and in press conferences and stuff like that, and the Chargers have continually said, we're committed to sticking this out. We're going to do all 3 years here in the stadium until Stan Kroenke's palace is ready and stuff like that, and they're doing all of that, and then but I don't know. I also hear whisperings, and I know that these whisperings have been vehemently denied by people inside the Chargers ownership group as well as the NFL offices, at least in public. But apparently, this attitude about the Chargers not working out in Los Angeles is it's gotten to the point where the NFL owners are having serious buyer's regret about letting the Chargers move.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. There's a saying in government: never believe anything until it's officially been denied. That kind of might have something. I suspect that kind of thing applies.
Oh yeah. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Is that like, if it's being denied, and if they feel the need to deny it vehemently, which is the attitude that I've been getting. From hearing from what some of these reports, it's like there's probably a lot of discord going on in the owners groups about what's been going on here, and so I guess the next question would be, it's like, where do the Chargers go from here? How do we see this resolving? I will say this: I mean, I'm just gonna lead into this with this premise. I think that any solution to the Chargers' problem here, I mean, it's not going to start. The ball is not going to start rolling for the Chargers to solve this problem until the end of this season, obviously.
Yeah,
But because
yeah, they're locked in for a little bit.
they're locked in for a little bit. Um, but I think I think the first step that's going to happen for them to resolve this situation is the Spanos family is probably going to have to sell the team. Would you agree with that analysis?
Probably, yeah. I mean, you don't really have any credibility as the Stanoses anymore. I mean, we moved, now we got to move out. So,
Yeah, because I don't.
Granted, NFL owners, they're rich. They have sort of a, I guess, what's the term? Lot like you've got a lot of leeway if you've got billions of dollars, essentially.
Yes, of course.
So there is that.
Yeah, but I don't think. But I mean, I guess
Yeah.
my point was that is like if because let's put it this way. I think that the NFL is looking at the solution for this problem. I don't think they're going to be able to get around the fact that the solution to this problem is going to be to have the Chargers move back to San Diego. But I think that the only way that happens is if the Spanos family sells it. And I don't think. I mean, I was actually listening to a reporter who was talking about this issue, and who actually interviewed quite a few people, off the record and stuff like that. He didn't divulge names, but he kind of stated that what he said was that the Spanos family has burned its bridges in San Diego. And he's like, and they are not going to be welcomed back. Not even Dean Spanos' kids are kind of welcome back there because I guess they made some comments as well.
Oh, probably.
And so it's like, so I'm willing to believe that the Chargers would be welcomed back to San Diego with open arms if it was under new ownership. It's like, and I think that would be a solution that the league would be happy with. But again, that's where it's going to be tricky is that how long does the NFL hang on to this experiment, of trying to keep the Chargers in Los Angeles? That's probably the first question. And then the second question is like, if the Chargers move back, how do you resolve the stadium issue? Or do you make it a prerequisite when the team is sold that or should it be understood that the person who buys the team is going to have to finance his own stadium just as Stan Kroenke did with the Rams? I mean, does that mean? I mean,
You
what
could
would
do
be
that. It just makes selling it really hard.
That's true.
So,
That's true. But then anybody who's been following this, who would be open to being an NFL owner is probably already aware of that.
yeah. Well, how many people are there wealthy enough and interested in the NFL? Especially there's whispers of other things. You've got the whole protest thing. You've got the whole concussion thing. I mean,
That's true.
and so the value of NFL teams might well be dropping. Just because you've got a lot of whispers of, I guess, danger, as it were.
Yeah, there have been a lot of danger whispers. I know that that's something that the NFL has been grappling with is the dropping TV ratings.
Yeah,
because so many people are upset over the protests. Now, I mean, I have my own ideas about the protests, but that's for another time.
Yeah, this is
but the number one thing that I can think of here is that the NFL. I think the NFL is in trouble. I think that they're realizing that they're in trouble, and I think the trouble started before the protests because you had situations. I mean, because let's face it, back here in my own home state of Minnesota, and this was an issue that was rearing its ugly head long before we had the Rams and Chargers relocation, issues popping up. There were a lot of people in Minnesota that I knew of who were pretty upset that the Viking Stadium was going to be taxpayer funded partly. And they were like, the Wilfs are multimillionaires. Why are they not forking over the money for their own stadium? They want a stadium in Arden Hills, and that was a big dispute here for a long time.
The obvious answer of why people don't want to fund their own stadium is because it saves them a lot of money. I mean, that's the obvious answer. This is not like rocket science here.
No, that's true. It's just that it's like and I think that was and I think a lot of the people realized that but I guess what their problem was that they couldn't understand why why local politicians would kind of bow to this kind of pressure and stuff like that. Now, obviously, there's probably an obvious answer to
There are
that
very
too.
obvious answers to that. Would
Yeah,
you like them?
yeah, I know. I think they go without saying. Like because that's nobody wants to be labeled as the guys who lost the Vikings or something like that. They don't want to be that.
There's that. There's donate. I mean, the whole basically these people have lots of money and they can make donations. And that's
Right,
just
exactly,
and so
exactly.
you've got if you're rich in politics or if you're rich, you can make a big splash.
Yeah, exactly. You can pull the strings,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's like but I gather but I guess my point was that is like I kind of gathered during that whole fiasco because we had 3 or 4 competing plans for a Viking stadium when they were debating where the new Viking stadium would be. And
Mm-hmm.
I know like the Wilfs were really high on the Arden Hill site. The state wanted them to build on the site of the Metrodome. There were 2, I guess, Duluth and Shakopee. Duluth is up on the North Shore for people who are not aware,
Mm-hmm.
and Shakopee is a southern suburb. They both put in bids, and the Shakopee plan was actually pretty affordable and really nice.
Mm.
Um, but I guess it's like there was that whole dispute going on, but that was a question that people kept raising all the time. Was that that a lot of the comment people were raising is like, don't use my taxes to
Yeah.
fund a millionaire's palace. This was basically how they were. I mean, they weren't using that language, but that was basically
I
what
mean,
they were
that's the
saying.
implication,
That's
and
the
it's
implication.
perfectly fine, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
that's
Right.
normal.
Yeah, that's a very very normal
Yeah.
question to ask, and and I guess now, like what we're seeing here in Minnesota, like I know the media is trying to downplay this quite a bit. That I'll see reports on it, but they try not to pump it up a ton. But this Viking stadium that they built here in Minneapolis now has, like because they kept complaining about the Metrodome all the time, that the Metrodome's roof would collapse
Mm-hmm.
if there was if there was a certain, if under certain weather conditions, snow being one, and I guess that there was another kind of weather condition that if it came along, every so often, the roof would be in danger of deflating and stuff like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like but now they've got a stadium who the tiles and the windows leak, and that was an issue, and I know because I did my research on this. That was an issue that doomed the Kingdome in Seattle,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which Seattle taxpayers are still paying for, even though the stadium is long gone. And I just looked at it, and I'm like, when I'm reading this stuff,
But
I'm just having,
just in general, with taxes, if
oh,
people knew half the stuff they were paying for, they'd
oh,
probably go to
that
war.
well, they would probably, well,
So,
it would make the protests over the Stamp Act look in the
yeah, exactly. But
1700s
I mean,
look like a
this is so
child's
much.
play.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, he was like, and people don't seem to get this and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I guess my point was that it's like I think the NFL started to get into trouble right there because you had that going on in Minneapolis with the whole fight over the stadium there, and now they've got a stadium that looks impressive, but it's like it really comes across to me several times when I look at it as a facade because I think it's like I don't think the outside of the stadium was that well constructed, and I think that the inside is just a nice facade, just to make people, just to make people feel better about it.
Right. Right.
It's like in Atlanta, I don't know that much about Atlanta's new stadium, but it's like they've got a roof that they've had that's supposed to, like cartwheel open and then cartwheels close and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's like, and I'm thinking to myself, it's like I I gathered there were rumors that they almost had the Falcons back in the Georgia Dome for the preseason because the stadium was still having issues and stuff like that. Now, granted, with something that massive, you're going to have teething troubles, but still, I was like, it's like you guys had like I don't know, maybe 2-3 years to put this thing together, and you still had trouble when the NFL season was getting to start. It's like
I mean,
that's not
let's,
a good
in
sign.
fairness, building coliseums, building like just random stadiums in general, it takes time. It does take time, and it does take time to do things effectively. So I'm not quite as, I guess, what's the term? Abrasive about that, or that's
Yeah,
probably the wrong word for it. But
well, yeah, that's true. It's just like I said, my point is that I just look at some of these new venues that they're putting together, and I'm just, like, obviously we don't know what Stan Kroenke's palace in Los Angeles is going to look like yet. It's like until it gets to a certain point. But it's like, and that's kind of beside the point because that's privately funded. But I look at some of these other public stadiums, and some of the, and it's just, yeah, it's just a mess. I mean, it's just it's. I think it started making more and more people disgusted because they were saying, it's like, okay, we're forking over money so these millionaires can save money. Why are we subsidizing the millionaires? It's like, we don't need to do that. And I think that was kind of where this whole, I think this was where the spiral began. And obviously it started, and obviously the NFL spiral is also, unfolding in some of the other areas, like obviously Roger Goodell completely bungled the Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson situations a couple of years ago. It's like, and he's also bungled the whole Patriots scandals thing. So like, I don't know how much of those are true or not. It's like he couldn't get enforcement of the New Orleans Saints problems under control. The whole Bountygate scandal and stuff like that. He couldn't get any of that under control.
Right.
And it's like, and so now they had the concussion scandal, which broke a couple of years ago. And now which they have a major Hollywood movie about. Is like, so it's like it seems like they've been chipping away at the NFL, time after time after time.
Little by little, yeah.
Yeah, little by little, and now it's kind of getting to a point where I think we're now getting to a point where we're starting to run out of stuff to chip away before the thing, kind of becomes second rate and stuff like that. Because I know one of the things in the middle part of the last decade, I remember reading an article or something like that that said that the NFL was the first-rate sport, in America, whereas Major League Baseball and the NBA and the National Hockey League were all second-rate because they'd had troubles, with I guess with player lockouts and strikes and stuff like that. It's like, well, the NFL hasn't had that problem, and they've been able to come across as a sign of stability. It's like, and actually, thinking back on it now, I think probably the player lockout a couple years ago probably didn't help the NFL's case either. Because that thing went down right to the wire. I mean, literally right to the wire. And you had guys who hadn't even been drafted yet who were suing the commissioner. Von Miller comes to mind. Von Miller's name was on the lawsuit against the commissioner during the lockout. And stuff like that. So, yeah. So I guess I think you have a good point there. That I think this league is being chipped away. I mean, they're going to become second rate first. I don't think that they're going to fold anytime in the near future because I think they got too much money for that. But they are being slowly chipped away, and there will come a point where I don't know. It's like I'm actually kind of wondering to myself, it's like what sport is going to take its place because it's like because used to be Major League Baseball was the national pastime for many years. It's like, and it still is in some ways, especially amongst the older generation. But it's like but now it's become Sunday afternoons watching football, and I mean I guess I would like to hear what your input is on. Which sport do you think would take the NFL's place as being a top tier sport? Because I have
the top tier sport, not a top tier sport. The NFL is the big dog in terms of in terms of money, in terms of basically, I guess, cultural influence, as it were.
Right. Yes.
I would say even beyond baseball. Now, what's the big four sports are football, baseball, basketball, and what's the other one?
Hockey.
Hockey, yeah. That's the other one. Or does something new take its place? Like, does soccer finally get off the ground and become like people have been talking? Oh, soccer, yeah. Eventually, we'll join the world. I don't know. Baseball. I could see baseball making a comeback. It doesn't have really concussion issues.
Right.
I'm trying to think of others. I mean,
I have a suggestion.
I don't see it basketball. I don't see it as basketball. I don't see it as hockey.
Right.
Um, I think either baseball or soccer makes or rises to the top. I don't really see anything else.
I could make a suggestion as to a
Go
sport
for
that
it.
I think will take the title. I think it'll be NASCAR.
Really?
I think it will be because NASCAR is actually
I thought NASCAR was having issues as well.
well, they might be, but the thing is that NASCAR, from what I can remember, NASCAR has they have a very financially sound system to their basically it's more financially sound than the NFL. I would even argue, even though the NFL system, has withstood the perils of time. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
but NASCAR has the thing where the owners all own everything. They own the track. They own the raceway. They own all these things. It's all privately financed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look at this and I'm thinking to myself, it's like from a financial standpoint, I could see NASCAR taking off, especially since NASCAR is being supported by some organizations which are very, very popular
Okay.
amongst certain people. It's like so that well, let's put it this way: they're very popular with the common people. They're not very popular with the media types and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It's like so and I think that's part of the reason why NASCAR has not become as big of a household name as some just yet, because because they're dealing with media blackout of certain sponsors and stuff like that, and the media's made it clear they don't like some of the sponsors that are sponsoring NASCAR and stuff like that, for purely
Right.
political reasons. And but at the same time, it's like there with NASCAR, you have a financially sound system,
Mm-hmm.
and to a lot of people, I mean, especially people who like football, because I've heard a lot of football loving people who really love NASCAR as well. Let's put it this way: I don't think it's a coincidence that Fox Sports, which is one of the four major networks that carries football, makes a
Mm-hmm.
big deal over their NASCAR coverage. I mean, they willingly publicize their NASCAR coverage, and that NASCAR is following football, as soon as the football season's over.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. I'm really not seeing it.
Okay,
Maybe because I think NASCAR is more regional. Maybe I think it's more based south than. Um, maybe. Yeah. Most the little that I guess the vibes I'm getting is that from a couple of the articles I've seen is that um, NASCAR like really has attendance issues.
okay,
Um, so maybe I mean maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but
yeah. I mean, I don't know either. And like I said, it's impossible to say. I mean, like I said, the only reason I nominated NASCAR as the possible one that would take football's place as a top tier sport was the fact that it's on financially sound ground, and they could probably make, if they see a weakness in the enough of a weakness in the NFL, they could really push. I think they could really push, publicity wise, the fact that they were,
yeah,
that they're there. So, and I think they would have the capital to be able to do that. I mean, and I might be wrong. And it's like I mean, I don't follow NASCAR incredibly closely. I have some family members who do,
right.
but and they make a big deal over how financially sound NASCAR is, and how the owners are very careful about their financial investments and stuff like that. It's like
Mhm.
and let's face it, here's another side too, to the NFL's problems, because I actually heard this being thrown around on one of the games that I was listening to
Mhm.
yesterday on the radio. Uh, one of some they were going the game I was listening to. There were a lot of injuries going on, and they all seemed to be going on at this one particular position on this team.
Mhm.
And one of the head announcer turned to the supporting announcer and basically said, "Do you think that we will see rosters expand with the number of injuries that have been taking place lately, especially when they all happen at one position and literally decimate the position?" And the the supporting announcer said no. He said, "No, I don't see it." He said, "Because, and it's going to come down to money." He said, "I don't think the owners want to be paying 65, 70 players, all season long, and some really big contracts just because of the uh, just because of the injury, risks and stuff like that. They'll point to the injury risks and to the likelihood of an entire position being decimated in one game as extremely rare. It's
Hmm.
like and I mean, although after what happened yesterday, I mean, it's fair to ask. I think after yesterday, if that's such a if it is incredibly rare after seeing the Panthers lost almost their entire secondary, in their game with the Lions yesterday, and then the Giants, I guess, lost all of, well, I heard somebody say that they lost all of their receivers in the game against the Chargers.
That would surprise me. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, so I look at that and I'm like, okay, it's like, but the coaches are probably going to be demanding expanded rosters, especially if these freak runs of injuries at one position continue or something like that. So,
Right.
but again, if the NFL's owners are coming across as people who are more interested in money, and I get that they're businessmen, they have to make a profit, but
Yeah.
if they're coming across as more interested in the money than in ensuring that their team puts together a quality season, which is
Hmm.
that, and that was the impression that I got when I listened to this announcer's reply as to expanded rosters. It's like this, that the league has some major image problems at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I think that that's probably would be, and I think that that's probably what's going to bring them down in the end, is the fact that it's like you have a lot of and let's face it, there are thousands of players who get cut every at the end of every preseason who have the talent to play the game, and they don't, and they never are able to make a career out of it. Let's face it, the Kurt Warners of the league are very rare. The
Yeah.
guys who stick it out and are able to make it work like 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Isn't the average what's the term career of an NFL player like 3 years or less? Pretty much. I think
pretty
it's.
pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, the Jerry Rices of the world, who play for 20 seasons, the Jerry Rices and Tom Brady's of the world, who
Yeah.
play for 20 seasons, they're rare. They are extremely rare. It's like, and I mean, let's face it. I mean, like, just look at this past offseason. Adrian Peterson, one of the best running backs in the history of the league, and he had to wait several months before he got employed, and even now, he's not a starter. It's
Hmm.
like, and I'm actually wondering, if he continues some of his some of his squawking about not getting the ball, if the Saints are going to have him next season. It's like if he continues like this,
Yeah.
and so,
Running
and
backs. Running backs go very quickly though.
that's true. That is very true. Running backs do fade incredibly quickly because of the amount of abuse they take.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think we are seeing the beginning of the unraveling of the NFL as a major player on the sports stage right now. Because let's face it, you can only take so many black eyes before you lose your top tier status.
Yeah.
And they've been dealing with black eyes easily since 2009, maybe before that, and stuff like that. I mean, they've been dealing with this for a while,
Hmm.
and I think that they're now, and I think it's getting to a point, and they are so concerned with their image that they're not concerned with the quality of the product that they're putting on the field.
Hmm.
And I think that that's kind of played in a little bit too, because I'm watching some of these games that are going on, and I'm like, it's like, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, this team wins all the time. I'm kind of sick of that, and stuff like that. And I think that there are quite a few NFL fans who are sick of that too.
Yeah.
That they're sick of the fact that it's the same teams all the time. That was one of the things that helped, lower Major League Baseball in the opinions of the American sports watcher, is because it's like, who was in the playoffs all the time? Well, the Yankees, and stuff like that. So I think that this is really a point where we're going to see the NFL go downhill, and I think it just started to accelerate this season. I think that that's all that we're seeing right now, is this: we're seeing the acceleration because they're dealing with the black eyes of the protests and the Chargers fiasco, and not to
Hmm.
mention, they're dealing with some very angry former NFL fans in St. Louis and San Diego right now, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Well, Paul, my friend, I'm very grateful that you were able to come on board with us. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us on an issue that I'm sure that's really it's going to be coming to the forefront as we get to the end of the NFL season.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it
So
was a lot of fun, and we'll no doubt we will be getting together and talking again in the future. So,
I look forward to it.
yep. So, all right. Well, thank you, my friend, and take care. And I will
You
talk to
too.
you soon.
Same to you. All right. Farewell, Grant.
All right, farewell. Well, thank you all for tuning in to this, the inaugural episode of the Rural Sense Show. Be sure to tune in next week when we will have another exciting guest and another exciting topic. I'm going to leave you guys in suspense as to what and who that really is. So, take care, everyone. So long.